poor Aliens franchise. For once, it could have rivaled the mighty Star Wars, in terms of narrative complexity at least. It has long since been turned into nothing more than grey goo schlock. But there was a time in the 1990s where Aliens showed a lot of promise, and today we're going to be taking a look at that sadly oft-forgotten Aliens EU.
What would become the Aliens and Predator expanded universe got its start in the late 1980s. Dark Horse Comics would produce a series of comics in 1988 that continued the adventures of Hicks, Newt, and later Ripley. These were a massive success that would later be undone by the foul dreck that was Alien 3. Fight me! The Predator expanded universe would get its start in 1989 with the release of the comic Predator Concrete Jungle. That would introduce Dutch Schaefer's brother and would feature his fight against the Predators. Aliens vs. Predator got its start in 1989 as well, and brought the Aliens and Predators together in an epic confrontation. In the 1990s, these comics would get adapted into novels, and an expanded universe of sorts would kind of coalesce. But continuity was never as tight as the Star Wars EU, although it was present. Sadly, this expanded universe never went anywhere, and the Dark Horse universe would die out by the late 1990s. What we did get was some great characters and a grimdark cyberpunk universe. The characters were really bloody compelling, and were not just a bunch of Ripley clones. And instead, they were all pretty much memorable in their own right. Most of the characters were flawed individuals that had to fight themselves as much as their enemies. The universe did not focus solely on the xenomorph, and instead it focused on corporate intrigue, although later entries would rely on the evil corporate scientist trope a bit too much. The writing of many of these novels was top bloody tier, and not a single page was wasted, and the novels split their attention between the great characters and lore. So, be me, be 2002, I had actually gotten out of reading fiction for a couple years, and instead just read history books. If you think inflation's bad now, just compare the rate over time. Anyway, around 2002, I discovered the novel AVP Prey at a local Barnes & Noble, and that single novel got me back into fiction for good. So with that in mind, we got 3 awesome gateway novels into the Aliens and Predator expanded universe. We got AVP Prey, Aliens Earth Hive, and finally, Predator Concrete Jungle. Aliens vs. Predator Prey was written by sci-fi writer Steve Perry and his daughter Stefani Perry. He is a great writer, but terrible at coming up with names, it seems. The novel was published on April 1st, 1994, and it is most assuredly not an April Fool. The novel clocks in at an efficient 262 pages, and man, those Perrys know how not to waste your time. What you got here is a great story along with, oh, I don't know, all the Predator lore ever? In 94, we had no lore at all for the Predators. The Perrys gave us every scrap of lore we were ever gonna get. We got a name for the Predators, the Dutcha. The lore is spread throughout the entire novel in little snippets. We learned that the Predator dreadlocks are part of a coming-of-age ritual, and that all the Predator women are hot Muslim mommies. Sadly, that would get retconned in the comics, but still. We also get lore for the Aliens universe too. We no longer just have Weyland Yutani, instead we have the glorious Nippon company called the Chiksaga Corporation. We got 2 heroes for this novel. Machiko Noguchi, the administrator of the Rishi colony where all the action takes place, and Dashin Day, a guy that is kind of like Optimus Prime crossed with a high school teacher. Yes, he is the captain of a ship filled with Predator teenagers, and he's gotta whip those unblooded whelps into shape. A young Predator has to pass a trial where he has to fight a xenomorph. If he survives, he becomes a Youngblood. If he fails, he dies. Predators send out ships to various planets that plant xenomorph eggs for the whelps to fight, and one such ship plants eggs on the Rishi colony. Uh-oh. Dashinde and co. land on the planet, and through a mishap, Dashinde is injured, and the other teachers get killed, and the teenagers run amok. Can Machiko and Dashinde stem the tide? So yeah, this is a kick-ass bloody book. Just writing about it right now makes me want to read it again. I gotta tell you, there is so much content in this novel. That plot is nice and efficient, but not only that, we get backstory for Machiko and Dashinde, and not only that, but this novel has time to breathe and is not all non-stop action. Truly, this is one of my top 5 favorite novels of all time. Next, we got Aliens Earth Hive, written by just Steve Perry and published on September 1st, 1992, and it clocks in at 278 pages, and Mr. Perry uses all of them wisely. This novel, if written today, would probably be 3 really sloppy and meandering books that would struggle to get to the bloody point. But when it came out in 1992, writers knew how to write back then. The novel does not feature Hicks or Newt. Instead, due to the shit-tier Alien 3, come at me, bro, they had to change the names to Wilkes and Billy. Only problem is, they are the exact same characters with the exact same backstory. Cue all the Spoodermans pointing at each other. The novel, like AVP Prey, has great character moments along with a great deal of lore that is interspersed throughout the narrative. And the novel changes perspective from Wilkes and Billy to other characters to give a much more complex and well-rounded narrative. Less than 300 pages here, folks. So the novel starts with a xenomorph being found by the Space Coast Guard along with the coordinates to the aliens' homeworld. Hicks is given his stripes and made senior non-com of the expedition to Xeno Prime. Newt got corrupt government to the conch and spent 10 years in a loony bin, and is still in there when the novel begins. The feds want her to be there so she won't tell anyone about the Xenos. Hicks learns that they are literally going to laser her brain and thus hatches a plan to rescue her. After breaking her out of the loony bin, he stashes her on the ship to Xeno Prime. Talk about out of the fire! Meanwhile, Xenos are being bred on Earth by a company called Bionational. And oops, we got Xeno cultists, and wouldn't you know it, the cultists help the Xenomorphs escape. So yeah, what you got here is a dual narrative of Hicks and Newt fighting on Xeno Prime and Earth dealing with a Xeno outbreak. I told you it was like 3 novels in one. This novel took Aliens to the next level and is the true sequel to the film Aliens. Predator Concrete Jungle was written by Nathan Archer, aka Lawrence Watt Evans. I can see why he picked that shorter pen name. Mr. Evans is a highly accomplished fantasy writer, most known for his excellent F-Star fantasy novel series, a series that we shall go in depth on in a later video. The novel was published on April 1st again, 1995. And like AVP Pre, is most assuredly not an April Fool either, and it comes in at a huge 306 pages. This novel is set in the 90s and features the adventures of Detective Schaefer and Detective Raish. Detective Schaefer is Dutch Schaefer's brother, and funny enough, we never learn his first name. And he is a stone-cold bastard and takes after Clint Eastwood instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He does crack wise now and again, but it's implied to be a coping mechanism due to PTSD. The most compelling character in the novel is Detective Raish. He is a family man who is most assuredly not a giant Adonis like Schaefer, but instead fights the good fight and will always stay true to his friend. So our gumshoes have to fight the fell forces of the Predators. Sadly, we don't get any Predator perspective characters, and we get no Predator lore, and the novel acts like none of the lore even happened. The Predators show up in New York City and come out in bloody force. Instead of there just being one hunting ship, there's stated to be dozens just chilling over the city. Can our Flatfoot stem the tide? The novel makes the Predators villains again, and they don't just take down drug and human traffickers, and instead they knock over a police precinct, meaning that they kill both good and bad people. This novel expands the Predator universe pretty well, but I would have liked to have seen the Yatja lore used in this novel to see what a past Predator was like. Now, if you happen to love those novels, then it's time to get cracking. Aliens Nightmare Asylum was written by the legend Steve Perry and published on, what's the deal with this? Why are all these books published on April 1st? 1993, and it clocks in at 277 pages. So, in Earth Hive, the Earth was taken over by the Xenomorphs and many human colonies were wiped out as well. Hicks and Newt hitched a ride on a drone ship and ended up on an asteroid ruled by the insane General Spears. We got lore, we got characters, and we got a great villain with a great backstory. He was grown in an artificial womb and then sent straight into the military. The wombs were rendered obsolete by androids for some reason. Spears is a classic bad guy with zero redeeming qualities. He wants to use the Xenomorphs to fight the Xenomorphs. I guess no one told him that artillery can chuck a 155mm shell 5 miles, but whatever, giving a space bug a rifle does have a cool factor, I guess. Spears is utterly round the bin, as Cyphus Kane would say, and even gets a stiffy from looking at an alien egg. He'd fit right in on DeviantArt. I actually got a comment from a fan asking if this novel turned Newt into a thought. Thankfully, not. Towards the end of the novel, Hicks and Newt have to escape Spears and his bully boys, and Newt shows them titties to distract a guard. That's it. In fact, Newt, despite having lived in a loony bin for most of her life, is actually a pretty modest and moral person throughout the series. The novel also marks the return of Ripley. Aliens: The Female War was another dual writer novel and featured the writing talents of Steve and Stefani Perry and was released on, thankfully, July 1st, 1993, and for a book only 293 pages long, manages to bring the true Alien trilogy to a close. Hicks and Newt met up with Ripley in the previous book, and now they gotta hatch a plan to cleanse the Earth of the foul taint of the xenomorph. So they're all having bad dreams, stay with me here, and through their dreams, they're able to figure out that there is a queen mother xenomorph, and somehow through their dreams they're able to find out where she's hiding. And thus, Big Rip and the boys hatch a plan to take her down. They beat the shit out of her, toss her in a starship, and then bring her to Earth. And then they drop her in Portland and have the xenomorphs on Earth gather around her, and then they nuke the shit out of them. Only way to be sure. I mean, I'm good with the Xenos, but Portland, I'm glad to see that its taint is erased once and for all. This is a great conclusion to the series. The stakes are high, and it's great to see Ripley and Newt work together to take down the Xenos once and for all. But, like with so many things, it never ends. Aliens Genocide would be the start of the Aliens EU proper, and all novels from this point on would never feature the original team ever again, and instead would focus on new characters in each novel, and the plots would be much less grandiose and more pure horror. Aliens Genocide would feature the adventures of Daniel Grant and Colonel, that's way too much rank for what she does, Kozlowski. So with the xenomorphs defeated, humanity has commercialized them by taking the Queen's Royal Jelly, a substance that is used to make more queens, and they turn that into drugs. When the supply of royal jelly gets low, an expedition is sent out to get more. A simple plot, but we still get some great character moments, and this is the story that introduced the much faster red xenomorphs. So after this novel, the other Aliens books would be alright, but the final novel, Alien Berserker, is the next one worth reading. It was written by Stefani Perry and published on August 28th, 1998, and would be the last of the Aliens EU novels published, and it kind of goes out with a bang and even leads into the novel Aliens vs. Predator War. This novel is nothing too special, and nothing really major happens. The novel introduces the Berserker teams. They go into a hive and then deploy an armored combat mech called a Berserker. It's essentially a Warhammer 40k dreadnought, but instead of a dead guy piloting it, you instead got a convicted criminal. This is one of those dramatic concepts that works in story, but does not stand up to scrutiny. In short, the suit is so dangerous to the wearer that only criminals are put in them. Why not just make them not dangerous, and why are they not standard issue since they are so useful? But anyway, in a mission gone bad, the Berserker team has to deal with a turncoat, and they barely escape with their lives. A pretty standard story, but it's still a decent shoot-'em-up read, and the cast from this novel escapes into AVP War. This novel would also be written by Stefani Perry and published on December 1st of 1999 and would be the last of the AVP novels ever published. There would be a couple of movie tie-ins after this, and then a novel called Aliens vs. Predators released in the current era. That novel is completely unrelated to any of the good AVP novels and retcons the muscle mommies. In that new AVP novel, the Predator females are oppressed by the patriarchy. Yes, that really does happen in that novel. And yes, I really hate current year. Anyway, back to the good old 90s. AVP War follows on from Berserker and AVP Prey. At the end of AVP Prey, Machiko Noguchi joined the Predators after defeating a queen, and has been trying to rise in their society. She has a rival called Shorty. Sadly, he's a little shit and not a short king. And the Preds even wanted to cut his balls off for being so short. Ouch. Talk about alpha chuds. Anyway, Machiko is having second thoughts about being in Predator society, and when the Predators start attacking a random colony, Machiko turns on them. The cast from Berserker shows up and helps a bit, but they're more or less side characters. However, one of them would later get together with Machiko in a comic called AVP 3 World War. One thing that is kind of interesting is that an android is said to be made by the Hyperdyne Corporation, a possible tie to the Terminator universe. As the last AVP book, it's pretty kick-ass. It ends on a high note. I feel like the AVP series could have been so much more, but alas, that was not to be. AVP War was a novelization of the comic sequel to the first AVP comic. AVP Prey, the novel, was so popular that it got a novel sequel before AVP War, the comic sequel, was written. AVP Hunter's Planet was written by David Bischoff and published in December of 1994, and while it was published before AVP War, it takes place chronologically after. Talk about chronologically confused! The novel opens with Machiko having already left the Predators and having settled down on a colony world doing boring crap. She has a sex robot now and is eventually roped back into a life of adventure by a random rich dude that wants her to help him out with a Hunter's Planet. Meanwhile, on Hunter's Planet, Shorty, aka Lard Nixva, takes over a group of predators and starts raising hell. Eventually, it all culminates in a big-ass battle that would have made for a great end to the series had this been the last book. Hell, the end of the book even sets up a new storyline where Machiko is the leader of a rebellion against corpo tyranny. So much cool shit left unrealized. Predator Cold War was written by our good buddy Lawrence Watt Evans and published on March 31st, 1997, and features some thunder on the tundra when Detective Schaefer gets sent to Siberia to do battle against some predators. Along the way, he teams up with a sexy Russian babe named Leksheva, and this is a pretty good Pred novel that, while limited in scope, is fun enough. It would have made for a pretty awesome movie, too. The Aliens and Predator EU got so big that at one point it got its own lore book, the Aliens Colonial Marine Technical Manual. It was written by Lee Burcombe Wood and published on March 1st, 1995. Okay, seriously, what's the deal with the Brits loving aliens? It's a movie about American space marines shooting the midnight black beast from beyond the stars in the face. We ain't got no tea, we ain't got no spotted dick, why do y'all like it so much? In fact, the first printing of the Colonial Marines Technical Manual was only released in the UK. You had to get lucky to find it at all in the US back in the day. I found it at a half-price books for $10 in 2004, and I loved every bloody page and read it from cover to cover over and over again. It gives you all the lore you could ever want about the Reasonable Marines, from the armor to the weapons to the ships. This is, in some ways, even better than the Star Wars Essential Guides and really makes the Aliens universe feel real and alive. Now, I said Aliens universe. This only deals with Aliens and not Predator or AVP, so we have no lore about them. Aliens and Predator were great franchises that could have been so much more than just snarly monsters stalking random characters. It could have been as big as Star Wars in terms of narrative scope, but sadly, it never got the chance to grow beyond those few great works of the 90s. If you haven't read these holy works of great justice, crack them open and remember the days when the world made sense and amazing books came out every day. I am General Lotz, wishing you good AVP Prey and good Aliens Earth Hive, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.